Welcome back to our newest episode on the Growth Playbook, hosted by myself, Kim Clark, and my dad, Alan Bolio. I'm excited to dive into today's topic. Our first episode ever that we did was on leading with optimism. And today we're taking that the next step by diving into applying that, the leading with applied optimism. So through both of our careers and dad, through a lot of your education and your degrees and everything too, there's just a lot of specific strategies, tactics, and just lots of details for us to cover to help business leaders during this period of uncertainty apply the concept of leading with optimism.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too, Kim. And congratulations, by the way, on getting us on Spotify. That's cool. So, way to go.
Thank, thank you. Thank you. Technology and I have a love-hate relationship, more hate than love, but figuring it out as I go.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And that's why you have brothers.
Yeah. Yes.
Let's talk about applied optimism because I think it's sometimes misunderstood. And it's a skill, so that means it can be learned. It's something that can be developed. It's nothing you have to be born with. Leadership is one of those things people say, oh, you're a born leader. Well, some people are, but others need to learn leadership, but they have to be willing to open themselves up to that learning. And optimism can be the same way. Um, you can be a pessimist, and given enough time, we can make you into an optimist. And those are the leaders that people want to follow, right? So it's it's not saying everything will be fine while the ship is sinking. I mean, that's, we used to kid about that, didn't we? You and I at work, it was like it'll be fine.
It's actually a well-known thing, even with like the picture of the dog with the flames all in the office, and it would
That's right.
say, "This is fine, everything is fine." But from that, any of my friends can tell you, I will tell them that fine is my favorite four-letter F word.
That's right.
And that's because it really has a negative meaning, not the positive meaning that when it's most often used.
Well, that's true. Um, I agree. And being an optimist and a leader who's an optimist isn't about being flamboyant. You can have a quiet personality and be an optimistic leader. It's not about being giddy and all smiles and giggly and ignoring the obvious and seemingly being oblivious to what's actually going on. When you're talking to a group of people and you think that that's optimism and they know there are problems, they know there are things going on and you ignore it, you're not an optimistic leader. You're at the worst case, you're trying to beguile them. Maybe that's not the worst. The worst is you're an idiot. Uh, you're trying to gloss over, and that just creates bad things in a company when you go to do that. And you mentioned my education. One of the things that I learned was that if you're going to be an effective leader, you have to have a mindset that we'll get into. It's servant leadership, but it's also integrity. If you don't have integrity, people will not be apt to follow you unless they also don't have integrity. If they think they can learn how to cheat, lie, and steal from you, they will follow you. Uh, I know we're off the optimism track, but it's just a beginning discussion into this whole leadership thing. So the integrity to me means you have to actually become optimistic and not just pretend to be optimistic, or else you don't have integrity. You're playing a part. Now, I did tell, I'm sorry about the present tense, I did tell all of my speakers before they walked on the stage, they had to let everything go and be focused on the stage and the people that are in front of them. I don't care how much pain they were in. I don't care if they just got a divorce. I don't care if the plane was on fire. None of that counts. And they don't want to know, right? You're just going up there to do the job. But that's not leadership. That's being a presenter.
Yep.
Authenticity is an important part of optimism as well, because if people know that you have integrity and you're authentic and you come across as optimistic, well, that's important. Now they see that this is real. and not just a game that you're playing. Um, it's something that shows that you have a path. Uh, it's emotion, it's emotional resilience. You know, and you and I know people, and we can be victim of this ourselves, is that we can see things in the negative, and we can say, this. How do we get through this? My gosh, how do we get through this? It feels like the walls are caving in, or it feels like, the three biggest clients all of a sudden are gone. How are we going to survive? And that pessimism just comes rushing in, and it can be overwhelming. A real optimist goes, uh, crap, let's sit down and talk about a plan. Let's see how we're going to get through this. It doesn't pretend to have all the answers. An idiot sits down and says, okay, this is what we're going to do, everyone.
I got it all figured out.
Yeah, that's right. That's not how it works. But it's this, it's that essence of we will get through this. There is a path through this. And at that point, it's important that you don't make any promises either about that path. You don't say, and nobody's going to get hurt, or, this is going to be easy, or don't worry about it, because they're going to worry. It's not easy, and somebody's bound to get hurt. So, you got to be careful not to make all those silly statements. And I've seen leaders in companies who have a very realistic view of the future, and yet and we're going to be talking about inspiration later, but through their optimism, people feel like there is a way, there is a future for us here at the company, because Jane is showing it, because Joe is demonstrating it. It's true optimism then is something that can be infectious, something that can be passed on. It's an emotional resilience that others feel and adopt. Um, and if you don't have it, you're just going to have people show up to do their job. If you do have optimism, they're going to say, okay, man, it's really raining today. The storm is blowing, but the ship hasn't turned over yet. We'll figure this out. And the hard part then for you in your marketing is to get that message out. Now, I don't think maybe there is, you tell me if there's such a thing as internal marketing, but there's got to be messages that go internally, so that if you lead, 50 people, like, some companies, that's one thing. But if you have 5,000 people, how's the CEO or leadership going to get that message out to people, Kim? Is there such a thing as inside marketing where you get that message out?
Yes, I was actually just talking with a client about that today.
Oh, okay.
It's funny that
Okay.
you bring it up. It's an internal communication strategy, if you will, to help educate. It's fit for any change. And as we know, you really can't over communicate. So coming up
Right.
with a strategy to educate and explain the why, explain how it benefits or doesn't benefit each individual, like type of role in the company. Obviously, there's some that may feel more impacted than others. You'll want a different type of so kind of like how you do segmented lists in marketing for your audience, you do the same thing for internally. You have your segmented type plans based on who it
Right.
is that you're communicating to, in addition to the overall strategy.
Okay. So you're familiar with it, and it's not a foreign concept. I didn't just make it up. That's really good. Uh, I don't think companies do it enough. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but I don't. Leaders who are not optimistic don't think about it, and others maybe that even are. It's just the leadership team that gets to see it, and others are kind of left in the dark. Um,
Yeah, or too busy would be another reason.
yeah.
Other reasoning could be the assumption that information will be funneled down appropriately, but that leaves room for the game of telephone, rather than a well-planned communication strategy, especially if times are tumultuous. You want to make sure that you're communicating even more and more clearly with the transparency, and also seeking feedback and advice. So that way it's not seen that you have all these answers. It's you can go to your manager if you have concerns about this, talk with your manager, and just fostering the environment of transparency at every level through the organization.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And to me, other times it's like when the stock market recently went through a couple of weeks where it was horrendous and 401ks were down, and that's all the media want to talk about. That can really upset people. And if you're a CEO who walks into the office every day with the Wall Street Journal tucked under your arm going, oh man, stop that. Communicate out the message, which is not a recurring message, but it can, the message is, it looks like this will be temporary. We've weathered this storm before. We will weather it again. You know, you're,
Yeah, and a lot of people just like to know that the problem, the root cause of the problem has been identified and how it's being resolved. I think back to when we were just talking about fine, everything's fine with the burning building. Yeah, oftentimes I've heard over my career that I just spent my entire day firefighting. I feel like every day I'm just putting out fires. And again, recently in a call with a client who had given me that commentary, I said, well, there's always a root cause to a fire, whether it's the match that started the fire, whether there was some accelerant that made the fire grow quicker and faster. I mean, it's the fire marshal's job to go in and identify the root cause of the fire, not just how the firefighters treated the burning building. And so your job as the leader, let's start dissecting, peeling the onion and figuring out what was the root cause to all of these fires so that way we can get to it and put a fix in place before it even turns into a flame.
yeah, I certainly agree with that. And that can really help turn a company around. Hey, I did a little research beforehand. I'm getting into AI, trying to catch up to you with AI. So I asked AI to give me some optimistic marketing messages. And so I didn't have to try to think of what they were. And there's some really great ones out there. Now, they can't be applicable to all businesses. I understand that, but the point is, well, I'm going to look, Disney's is the happiest place on earth. I mean, it's like,
I would disagree, but
yeah, yeah. But as
too
it,
too people for me.
yeah, if you distribute, nuclear waste, you're not gonna, that's not going to work, right? Coca-Cola is open happiness, when you open up a can. And Procter and Gamble had one for a while that was thanks, Mom. I mean, there's a way for, I'm asking you, I shouldn't be telling you. To me, there's got to be a way for a company, no matter what they do, to express some sort of positivity to what they do. Um, you know, it, Making the world a better place by removing your manure. That's pretty long, but you know what I mean. We're here on the farm. Whenever it goes away, it's a good thing. Uh, Relieving you of all the crap in your life, It's good.
I I think your examples touch right upon one of the pillars or foundational components to a positive, optimistic marketing messaging, if you will, is how are you alleviating a stress for the person you're talking to? And by doing so, everything that you're talking about is focused on them. It's not focused on you. It's not saying, I'm the best at removing your manure. It's not saying, I'm the best at removing the crap out of your life. It's saying, I can do this for you. Would you like me to remove all the crap out of your life? Like it's a caring sentiment that you truly want to make your client's life better than it was before they started working with you.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about them, which is business empathy or something like that. And at the same time, it's not just a feel good, but at the same time, it's not just a lowest price crap maneuver. That's I guess good sometimes. Maybe that's number three on the competitive advantage list. But uh, the first one seems to be the attention grabber in through there. Um,
Yes. Yep.
yeah.
And you had so back to the applied optimism for the leader, we had briefly touched upon, just looking at my notes down here, you had said a conviction that we can choose to make things better. And one of the things when you put that together is something that I've taught Chloe all through her life is I'm very huge advocate for emotional intelligence and teaching her how to process emotions versus react to them. And one of the things, the signs that I got for her says, happiness is a choice. And that's actually a foreign concept to a lot of people. A lot of people
Yeah.
that I've met over the years is that I feel sad today, so I must stay sad. Like, this is just how I'm feeling today. And it's, well, no, happiness is a choice. I've had plenty of colleagues over the years ask me, Kim, how can you be so energetic when you're coming into this meeting? All of this is going on, things aren't working well. Well, I'm going to choose to be happy. I'm not happy these things are going on, but I'm not going to let them impact me emotionally. I'm going to have a clear mental state that's motivated and positive, and that's going to give me the best outcome to find a solution to the challenges that we're going after right now. So it's part of that being a leader. You have the choice to change how you're feeling about a situation, whether you like the situation or not.
That makes a lot of sense. And emotional intelligence is not present in every leader. Uh,
It should be.
it, it should be, but it's not. I mean, I've worked for people, and we have seen people who are absolutely brilliant in their field, but really don't have any feel for the people around them and that are working for them. And that makes them an effective technical leader, I suppose, and it could make them brilliant. It can make them even ingenious, but that doesn't make them an optimistic leader that people will climb the hill for.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a big difference, because when things do start becoming shaky, people may quickly look for work elsewhere because you did not fully have that full I'll climb the mountain with you relationship in place. So it makes an even bigger difference during the hard times.
Yeah. So emotional intelligence and integrity and an openness, understanding it's emotional content that you have to have and that you can share, I think are certainly part of the application. I have another one that I firmly believe in, and I didn't make this up. It's the fail fast and fail forward. Now, last time we talked, it was failure was not in your vocabulary, but we discussed it, and it was really capitulations not in your vocabulary.
That was the word.
That's right. Because you would agree. I mean, if you're doing a marketing campaign and an aspect isn't working, you're not going to say, "Well, doggone it, I'm going to stick with it." You're going to say, "That's not working." And
Correct.
so fail fast and fail forward. Now, I think leaders who have that mindset displaying optimism. Okay, so it failed. It's not the end of the world. What do we learn? And how
Hmm.
can we use that going forward? That's an optimistic leader, as opposed to someone that says, you failed again, really? You know, and people do that. We know people, we've
Yeah.
heard people that do that. And those are not optimistic leaders. So the browbeaters and those who cannot tolerate failure are by no stretch of the imagination optimistic leaders who will have people wanting to climb that hill with them and follow them. And it's probably an easy trap for some people if they're worried about nickels. Maybe I shouldn't diminish that. If they're worried about the bottom line, or if they're worried about, I don't know what they might be worried about, because I believe in fail fast, fail forward. Um, I liked it when people would come into my office and said, I made a mistake. I thought, great, you came to me. This is great. As opposed to
We can work
hiding.
with this.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly so. And it's when I would say the end of the world is not here, the earth is still spinning, air is still breathable. Let's talk. You know,
Yeah.
and that if anybody listening has a natural bent towards failure is intolerable, failure is a mistake, failure mindset like that is going to diminish the growth of their company and not help with retention one iota and actually spread a fear through the company. So instead of being an optimist that encourages risks, you're going to be someone who says, I take the risk, you just do your darn job. And that's not a leader.
Yeah. I would also add to that that you have the leader who is okay with the failure, but incapable of learning from said failures. So failures continue to repeat. So I think that was an important part of what you just said, where you say failing is okay, but let's learn from that so that way we can grow, we can avoid it again in the future, and we can use this to solidify an even stronger process for us moving forward. Some leaders just don't have the ability to problem solve that way or dissect a situation that way. They can see just three surfaces down and not to the root cause, as I was talking with like the fires and everything else. They just see the symptoms. And so that's another area where I feel if you're truly able to use applied optimism in your leadership, you're also one of those leaders who surrounds themselves with smarter people than you. I'm a huge advocate for surrounding myself with very smart people because I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. But if you're a leader that does need to feel like you have all the answers and you're the smartest person, you're also not going to be the one that's going to be able to dissect the failures when they happen.
That's very true. It's it's also true, I think, that a lot of people that say that I surround myself with smarter people than me don't really mean it. They just it's a slogan, you know, it's just it sounds good, but they don't believe it. They believe they are the smartest person in the room. So it has to be genuine.
It does have to, and I mean it. That's why I'm on the podcast with you.
Well, thank you for that, but it has to be genuine for sure, because people will see it other ways that it's not genuine, and that goes back to the integrity issue of applied
Mhm.
leadership, and also with that, and you know, there can be a long list of this, but in leadership courses and learning how to be a leader is how to communicate. And some people communicate better than others naturally, but I think everybody can learn how to communicate in a way that works with people and helps people. And it may take some time, some training. You may have to fail a few times, but what do you learn from the failing is important. Because if you're a leader listening to Kim and I today, and you find that your direct reports or your direct reports are hesitant to come to you, you have a problem. You're not viewed as an optimistic or an empathetic, or you're not communicating properly that you are, or you're not making them feel like they can. You know, there's some communication issue that's going on, whether you don't know how or you're just faking it and telling yourself you're an optimistic leader. Like I've heard so many people say they are servant leaders. And
Mm.
then the more I look at them, I go, you probably should look that up. Uh,
Yeah,
Servant leadership is right up there with optimism, and people who are optimistic don't have to be servant leaders, but I happen to be a fan of servant leadership. That's where you put selfless actions, caring and kindness, people before profits. And you have to really mean it because people will see the difference. And that can be very hard to do. I'm on the board of a company that really practices servant leadership because there's no quarterly call to Wall Street. There's no private equity money. There's none of that that's driving it all, which is a subject we can get into later. But your ability to be a servant leader is dependent upon your circumstances to a large extent.
I think maybe some of that would play into one of our upcoming episodes on building a business that lasts.
Yes, and it will. Yes, that will be a part of that discussion. And what is it, and when's it possible, and all the rest of that. I'm looking forward to that episode as well. All right, so today, application. It is the integrity, it is the empathy, the emotional intelligence, which there are courses on that, right? I remember
Lots
taking.
of them.
Okay, any in particular come to your mind because
Well, I'm trying to think what we used most recently was Biz Library, the one that the LMS course that we used, and they had a lot of EQ training classes available on there. But there's others like Skillshare, Coursera. These are all online classes that have a plethora of training, but EQ is included as part of that one of those categories.
yeah, and that's what Google is there for, and AI. So you can ask Google and AI about courses if you need it on emotional intelligence. And if you want to know if you need it, ask direct reports that are honest with you.
If you can find
If you can't, that's another sign.
answer.
Yeah, that's right. And there is that emotional part, and this is emotional. I mean, applied leadership displaying optimism means there's no room for BS either, because people will spot that, and then your integrity is gone, and your optimism is false, and you've destroyed whatever it is you're trying to do. Um, it's just the basic rule. And with that, I think there's things that people will be amazed at the turn in a business and what it can do to the people around you. As all of a sudden they're breathing easier, they're freed up, and they will come to you with ideas and solutions, and they will come to trust you and all kinds of things through good times and bad, as opposed to wondering what's going to happen tomorrow when we go into the office.
I was just thinking as I was actively listening, and what that brought to mind is one of the topics that we reviewed in our last episode with the labor market, and how concerned everyone is with retaining good employees. And there's that common phrase of employees quit their managers. And so while this might sound like fluff stuff that we're talking about, but it's really not. It really can make the difference between retaining good employees versus just having a team full of C players.
Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, if somebody's taking it in as fluff stuff that I don't need to do, they may be in the wrong seat as far as leadership goes, or may have not likely to succeed well beyond where they are as far as management goes. Which, by the way, a lot of millennials don't want to be managers,
Mhm.
which is another interesting topic for another day when you bring up labor and what the future holds. But for those that want to be leaders, this applied optimism is an absolute must. And if you go in I forget how long it is. I did know it at one time, but you go in one day without it, and how many weeks it takes you to get it back.
Mm.
It's not the next day that you bounce back from it, because that memory will linger until it slowly fades away. And I can't remember how long it was, but I was amazed at how long it was.
Yeah, I don't know how long that is off the top of my head either. I just lost my train of thought on what you were saying on that. But looking at the time, so we're wrapping up this episode on applied optimism. Next episode, we're going to talk about leading with inspiration. But I have some notes here just as kind of a summary, and we can pick it apart for a couple last few minutes here, and then we can close out. Okay, that sounds good.
Yep.
So you had said to me, applied optimism is a conviction that we choose to make things better. And that's where we briefly discussed choosing happiness, emotional intelligence, and all of that. The second thing was an emotional skill that enables you to see opportunities where others see only roadblocks and difficulties. And this, I don't think I actually came right out and said this part when we were chatting about that, but one of my other Kim-isms, if you will, has been through every challenge comes an opportunity. And so it's important to not shy away from a challenge that's coming your way, because it's going to push you to be better tomorrow than you were today. Tomorrow, you should always be better and stronger than today you, from learning from everything that you go to, good and bad. Um,
I intercept
yeah, please.
in that whole thing that you just said, which I firmly believe in, that the challenge can be such that it teaches you we're really bad at that. We ought not to be doing that anymore. Or we need to really change who's involved. I mean, it can lead to a lot of great change, but if you deny the reality of what's in front of you through a blind optimism, uh, it's awful dangerous.
Yes. And an easy thing to fall into, I would think, if you
Yeah.
really want to be that leader that says, I am an optimistic leader. to have that blind optimism or just that giddy attitude that you were talking about. I think part of what we were discussing before too is that the leader who does it, who thinks that they've made it, I apply optimism, so I've met my goal as a leader in this particular area and I can move on. It's constant learning, and I think that's one other thing that some leaders don't, I don't want to say focus on or think of, maybe just don't think of, is that we're constantly evolving in our skill set. So even if you're good, you could still be better. Progress makes, or practice makes progress, is what I like to say, instead of practice makes perfect, because there's no such thing as perfect, I guess, in my mind.
That's not what the last Father's Day card said, but we'll get past that.
Oh no, I'm gonna lose my favorite child status. Joe, I hope you're listening. Today might be your day.
But you're right. I didn't mean to derail your summation point. So please.
Oh, no worries at all. So the third had been the ability to show resilience and maintain a positive mood even in the face of adversity and challenging situations, which I feel like we've covered in today's episode. A way of seeing over the horizon and being able to make strategically wise decisions. Again, not necessarily a skill set that all leaders have. To what you said earlier, they can be really great in their craft, but they lack the vision of what a leader needs to have. I don't know. I don't think we touched on that one too much in our dialogue so far. Is there anything else there you want to touch on before we move to the next summation point?
Just that by definition, it's the job responsibility of the CEO. I mean, if you're so stuck in the day to day, you're COO. The CEO is supposed to be the visionary, the one who can see over the horizon and ask the right questions. You don't have to develop the plan, but you have to ask the right questions and guide things along. So hopefully, CEOs listening to us are that visionary.
That's a good point also from the other lens then, to think of, if you are the CEO who's still too much a business operator to truly fill in as the CEO function as you should, then there's another problem in the business that maybe we can address on a different day of a CEO who's too involved in the day-to-day of business operations.
Yeah, that's that happens.
It'll be fun to unpack that. Might be a couple episodes.
Good.
Next, the final point that we had here on our list of how to lead with applied optimism was, remember, optimists have learned skills to bolster their energy and generate a positive mood, and those skills are then picked up by those around them. This is the number one value of optimism in a professional setting. And one of my tidbits that I added to it that I'm not sure if you would agree with or disagree with, but I've used it in my leadership for team members over the years, is music. Music, I find, is a great job changing a mood or a mindset. And if you're sad and you want to stay sad, you listen to sad music. You want to be angry and stay angry, you listen to more hard rock type of music. And so music can be a powerful tool that you can use to help change your mood while you're still learning the emotional skill set of how to do it without that as a tool.
I agree 100%. And the best music to turn your attitude to the positive is a group with a strong brass section.
Are you biased at all there?
Just a little from the early years.
Not a piano? I think I would lean towards piano.
No, I can only handle the three keys on a trumpet. To handle a piano is much more than I could do. But you're
Excellent.
right. I think music is powerful that way, and it's a good personal tool to use.
Yeah, especially while you're still learning the EQ tips and tricks and you're going through the courses and learning how to implement these emotional management tactics that we're saying are needed to be a good, strong optimistic leader. Music, I just find, has been a good resource for team members along the way, to help them as they're learning it.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
Excellent. You have, well, actually, we have here one final thing as a reminder of what it is not. So we just went through what it is, and maybe we leave the leaders really quickly with a summation of the key bullet points of what applied optimism is not before we part ways for the day.
Yeah, it's that, which brings us back to the beginning where, we said it is not a flamboyant, it is not giddiness, it is not smiling through everything, it is not everything will be fine as the ship is sinking, at least the hole is only halfway below the water line, there's none of that stuff that nobody will believe. It is not denying reality, is what it amounts to. It's facing reality with a what do we learn can do attitude.
Yep, I love it. Great. Well, this has been a fun topic, and I look forward to next week's episode where we are going to do leading with inspiration, which could seem very similar to optimism, but they are, in fact, very different. And so we have some really great content to go over in that episode. Final thoughts you'd like to share with everyone, Dad, before we head out for the day?
Uh, just the importance of the communication aspect. You brought it up, Kim, and I think you're absolutely right. Internal and external communication of that optimism is a must. If it just exists in the C-suite, it falls way short. And at the different levels, as appropriate to the different levels, is an absolute must.
Agreed. And it requires an educational component, compassion, empathy, understanding, just like it does to your target audience externally. Your internal audience needs it just as much.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great.
All right. We'll see you next episode.
You bet. Bye.
Bye.